I hit the record button. Well, welcome everyone to April 22nd, the day after yesterday and the day before tomorrow. I heard a joke today that the days of the week have been changed from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to that day, this day, the day after this day, and the other day.
Right.
So they all.
Who knows what? I will tell you, this has been the longest 3 weeks of my life. I don't know about you, Ed.
Right? Yep. Yeah. No, that's for sure. I tell you. So, all right. Well, welcome everyone to our group coaching session here. Quick introduction. Probably many of you already know who we are. My name is Ed Earl. I run a construction project management business in San Diego, serving as an owner's rep who works with homeowners building custom homes and high-end remodel. And next to me here is Paul. Paul, why don't you give a little introduction of yourself?
Well, I've been doing this for 35 years. It makes me an old guy. I've worked with 400, 500, 600, I lost count, construction companies between $1 million and $100 million. So I made a lot of mistakes with my money, other people's money, and learned a lot. And so I've never done this before. It's exciting times. You know, I consider this has been the longest 3 weeks of my life. I've never worked harder getting all this together. I'm sure a lot of the, attendees feel the same way. Construction has never been quite like this, ever.
Yep. Exactly. And our third partner in crime, David Luperger, is actually on a service call right now. He's going to be joining us shortly. But David comes from the remodeling world. He ran a remodeling business for 30 years and is also the author of The Emotional Homeowner. So, and between the three of us, we're all a bunch of old guys. We've got about 95 years of experience between us. So. Just real quickly, the goal of this group coaching session is to really give you current, up-to-date information. We've every week got new information on what's going on in the world of getting disaster aid, as well as other changes that are happening daily, if not weekly, in our industry. So, but also in this group coaching call, unlike our Friday webinars, we want to give the participants a chance to ask questions, to contribute, and hopefully we'll be able to call on a couple of you and have you contribute as well. All right, well, let's do a quick check on the state of the nation. So the good news is things have not changed in the last almost 2 weeks now. So the states that are allowing construction and not allowing construction have stayed pretty much the same. We still have the 5 states that are restricting construction. And then we also have the 7 states that have no statewide orders at all. So if you're in one of those 7 states, you may think that is good news, and it is, but I want to share with you this little news clip that I saw, which is good news and bad news. So the latest researchers are saying that 4 states may be able to reopen in early May. And those 4 states are Vermont, West Virginia, Montana, and Hawaii. Yay, Paul, you can go back to Hawaii.
Yeah, and go home. Hallelujah. I'm going to go to Europe instead, right.
So as early as May 4th, right? So that's less than 2 weeks from now. And that most other states would open in mid to late May. However, there are certain states that they're thinking are going to have to wait until June or even early July. And guess which states those are? Iowa, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Utah, Arkansas, and Oklahoma. They're those exact gray states that I just showed you back on this map here. It's all those gray states. So that's the downside of being in one of those gray states, is they're saying that you have to wait until then before they can open them up, because the infection rate hasn't progressed far enough yet. So. All right, well, moving on to our CARES aid update. Let me give you a quick update on where things are with that. So the COVID economic injury disaster loan now has actually, the advanced payments now are starting to show up in people's bank accounts. And also they've changed the rule now. They're only offering you $1,000 per employee up to $10,000. Still no further details when the larger loan amounts will be determined and dispersed. So we're still waiting on that. The Paycheck Protection Program, the first round of $349 billion started on April 3rd and ran out on April 16th. The good news is that yesterday the Senate passed an additional $320 billion to replenish the program. They also set aside 20% of the funds, which is about $60 billion, for smaller lenders, because there was this whole controversy about what happened with the bigger lenders, which I'll go into on the next slide. So that hasn't been passed yet. The Senate passed it yesterday. The House is expected to pass the bill on Thursday, and it's pretty certain that President Trump will sign it. So hopefully there'll be more money in the PPP program. The direct payments to workers and families, that's the $1,200 to adults and the $500 to children. Those have started being made as direct deposits to any tax filers who provided their bank accounts when they filed their tax returns. So if you did that, you should start seeing that money in your bank account if you haven't already. If you didn't provide your bank account, or you mailed your tax returns in, it could take another 2 or 3 weeks for those payments to be mailed out to you. And then the unemployment benefits, those funds are available, but the hitch is that you have to have a high enough income to qualify for that additional $600 a week in unemployment. So let's talk a little bit more about the Paycheck Protection Program. As I just said, it's sold out. $349 billion was claimed in less than 2 weeks. 1.6 million small businesses received the loans, which sounds like a lot, but it's actually only 6% of America's small businesses. The average loan size was $240,000. I think that's probably the largest loan that we heard from any of our clients. So that tells you that there were several people that got bigger loans. And as a matter of fact, that's what happened. Small businesses, as you can see from the headlines there, they're suing Wells, JP Morgan, and other banks because they're claiming that the big lenders unfairly favored companies that were seeking those higher loan amounts. So that was the problem with this program. They targeted the segments of their customers that they knew they could get more money from, because as you pointed out, Paul, all the banks are getting a 1% servicing fee on every one of these loans, correct?
Yes. So what they're going to do is, I'm sure 20% of their clients produce 80% of their business, right? So would you rather do people that borrow, a protection plan, or would you rather somebody that's going to do 20,000, no contest?
Yeah.
Just as hard to process. So basically all the small people like myself were left out. But there is new news that is exciting, which I'll cover now.
Exactly. So now the other option was, like, I had a community bank. I switched from B of A to a community bank. But again, because I had an existing relationship with them, they work with that. But for those of you out there that don't have a relationship with a community bank or aren't borrowing hundreds of thousands of dollars, you're kind of left out in the cold. So here was the timeline, and I want to show you what happened here. April 3rd was when the SBA opened the applications to the PPP loans. And the SBA started funding them on April 10th. So they had a full week for the big banks to process those loans. But it wasn't until April 12th when PayPal was the first non-bank lender to be approved to fund the PPP loans. And then after that, on the 14th, Square, you guys may be familiar with Square, Intuit, you can actually apply through QuickBooks now. That became available on the 14th. On Deck and another on Deck lender also became approved on the 15th. And then on the 16th, all the money ran out. So that's the problem. But Paul, why don't you share your story? Because we all know of your issues you had with Chase.
Well, there's hope for all you small people out there, like myself. So I'm gonna because I've got a lot of people that are on 1099. So many people I actually have on payroll are my wife and myself, and I only get about $25,000, which probably doesn't sound like chasing we're chasing, no pun intended there. So I have yet to hear back from Chase, but one of our clients go through PayPal and get funded in like 3 days. Oh my God. So I said, this is amazing. So I went to PayPal and I applied. The good news is the application is 3 pages long. It's really easy. They don't want P&Ls. All they want is, they didn't want a tax return. They just wanted my checking account so they could make sure that when they put the money, it was the right checking account, and they wanted my payroll record. That was it. And so I applied, and that was 3 days ago. This morning, 4 in the morning, I get signed for the loan. I got all the loan papers to sign. So they must have figured something got funded because they have to fund with the 7 days of loan papers. So I signed all the loan papers. You do it by DocuSign. You go click, 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 click. It takes you about 5 minutes. You're done signing all loan papers. Once you sign the loan papers, they have to fund, I think, within a week. So that means they're going to get the money within a week. So I think PayPal is the answer. because I never talked to a person. I did have a little concern. So I called up and I said, I never got a hold of Chase ever. When I finally waited an hour on the phone to get a hold of Chase, somebody got on the phone and said, we know nothing. Don't call us again. We have no clue what's going on. Just email us, forget the whole thing. My Chase banker called me about a week ago and he said, did you apply yet? And I go, yeah, what's going on? He goes, I have no idea. No clue what's going on. You have to wait for an email. Nothing's happening. So Chase is just a waste of time. It's an entire mess. I run a significant amount of money through them. Doesn't count. I have a whole bunch of credit with them. Doesn't count. I'm not in the big guys, so irrelevant. With PayPal, on the other hand, I was, I got a little concerned yesterday, so I called PayPal. They answered the phone within like 5 minutes. I got a real person who was very kind, and she goes, hey, how can I help you? And I go, well, I applied. She said, let me walk you. She walked me through where the loan was supposed to be. She helped me look at it. She says, well, the next thing you have to do is you'll get a thing to sign all the papers. When you get the thing to sign all the papers, you're good. You should get that in a day or two, and then you'll get the loan within a week. And I went, great. So this morning I got the papers. I signed all the papers. I should get the money within a week. So we do have a solution. And I told her, I said, I'm going to get on the phone this morning, and I'm going to talk to lots and lots of contractors and send them all to PayPal. And she was all excited. So anyhow,
so the one question, right. So the one question I have, Paul, because I got on PayPal as well, I don't have a PayPal business account. I have a PayPal personal account. And I couldn't find anything on the PayPal personal website about the PPP program. So I wonder if you have to have a PayPal business account like you do in order to apply.
I don't know. I mean, I like running $1 million for PayPal a year, so I'm sure that helps.
Right.
But,
right.
I don't think, I mean, maybe that was particular, but that guy we talked to, that client Mark, remember him? He's a little bitty guy. He got it, and I'm sure he doesn't have like the volume I do.
Good point. Right.
And it was fine. So you may have to sign up for a commercial account as opposed to just a personal account, but I'm sure there's a way to do that on PayPal. And a commercial account will cost you, I think it's $19 a month for a commercial account. I think the other one's free. So you probably have to sign up for a commercial account and pay the $19 a month. But I think that's what it's going to take. But I do have an answer for people out there. And I would suggest everybody, I told my clients this morning who's been waiting forever, I said, go online, get a business account with PayPal and apply today. It'll take you 30 minutes and you're done. And I'm sure they're efficient at getting loans in because that's what they do. And they actually care about the small guy.
Yeah.
Now I have a question.
And then also,
Well, question is, I signed the loan papers. I mean, I literally signed for the loan. It says, you're going to pay it back at this thing, blah, 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 blah. So I assume the funding's there. I mean, do you sign up for the loan before the funding's there? You know how that works?
I don't know. That's interesting. I signed my loan papers last week when, before the money had run out. But it's interesting that they sent you those loan docs this morning. Maybe there's a certain amount from that original funding that PayPal had earmarked.
Or maybe they've actually funded it. Maybe it's actually enacted and it's funded.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so because the Senate, just like I said, passed it yesterday, and the House has to pass it now, and then to get it into law, Trump actually has to sign it. So, and I know that hasn't happened yet. So, but maybe they know it's happening, so they're putting you in line. I don't know. So the other thing I wanted to share too, another client of mine did it through QuickBooks, which is Intuit, which you can see on this chart here is they were also approved. Intuit was on April 14th. The issue he had is that they calculate your loan amount based on your payroll information that's within QuickBooks. So he ended up actually getting less than he wanted or he thought he should get because they based it on his average payroll numbers that were actually what was in QuickBooks over the last 12 months. Right. So that could be the downside of using Intuit in QuickBooks. So, all right. So one last slide on the Paycheck Protection Program, just to let you know about round 2. If you didn't get your application in time, as Paul just said, consider an online lender like PayPal or Intuit through QuickBooks. Lendio is the other one that I've heard about that I would recommend as well. And make sure you have all of your required information. Also, there's a petition going around, although maybe now it's probably not as relevant since they got passed yesterday. But there was a petition that they were trying to get Congress to go ahead and pass that $850 amount The 850 billion is what the estimate is of the additional amount that would be required to be able to service all small businesses. So anyway, I see our partner David Luperger has joined us. Welcome, David.
David.
Good afternoon, everybody.
So I don't know how people are listening to this. We've had a lot of people that gotten funded. I mean, way more than 50%. I would say most, better than half of our clients got funded. Would you say that is? Something like that?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
And the money's in the bank. I mean, it's not just a loan approval. You're saying the money's in the bank, Paul.
Well, for those half of our clients, they've gotten the money. It's in the bank.
Yeah.
So,
all right, David, I'll let you.
Oh, there is one thing I want to bring up, and this is relevant to this, and that is, we had a client the other day that said, "Well, are you sure they're going to let forgive the loan?" And I said, "Are you nuts?" And then when I told my wife this morning, we got the money. I just filled out the loan papers again in a week. What's the first thing she said? "Are you sure it's going to be forgiven?"
Right.
So how do we tell people it will be forgiven? Don't freak out. It's the rules.
Well, it's the first 8 weeks from the loan inception, correct?
Right. I know, but that's all they're giving you anyway, and that will be forgiven unless you commit fraud, or you don't spend the money on payroll. That's it.
And that was the other suggestion, Paul, which is say, put this money in a separate account, and then
I don't think you have to do that. I think, because most people are going to, I have one business account, right? Everything comes in, all my payroll comes out. So I'm just going to put it, that's the account the money goes to, because when you fill out PayPal, they say they want a copy of your business account. And I gave them a copy of, one of my statements. That if I can get it off your phone, you just get PDF off your phone and you can send it to them. It's easy. So if they're going to fund that, good.
I was going to say, I'm going to unmute Stephanie because she's got some interesting information and experience of what happened with her. So Stephanie, you're unmuted. Why don't you please, if you can, tell us what your experience was?
Sure. We did it through Santander Bank, we have about 4 accounts with them. We did all the paperwork. We signed all the documents, initialed. They actually made sure we initialed in certain spots, went back and forth with them. Friday, they told us, we're approved, we're good to go. Everything's been pushed through to the SBA. I didn't hear from them all weekend, so I texted my banker, because we're on that kind of term now, and asked for my SBA loan number because one of my friend's companies was funded, and she said the money was deposited, and I said, okay, let me call my banker and find out. He said the money will be there in about a week. Called me back 20 minutes later and said, you're on a wait list, and said that we needed an SBA number, and then the money had dried up. So we're going to go on round 2. But unless you have an SBA loan number, I don't think you're guaranteed to get the funds.
Wow. Interesting. Okay, that's very interesting to know, Stephanie. Yeah, I didn't get an SBA loan number when I signed my loan documents last week.
Right.
Did you get an SBA number, Paul, when you signed today?
No, I did not. I just this morning I filled out an initial 17 zillion places and filled it all out, but I did not get my SBA number. So maybe what they're doing is they're putting people in queue with the loan documents and everything signed. I'm just guessing. I have no evidence of this. And then when the next round of funding comes, you're going to be first come, first serve and get in there in the beginning. And probably will get it because we're in the first line for the 380 billion.
Right. That's what my banker said, that we were first in line at that bank just because we did all the paperwork and everything is ready to go. And we signed the documents. But no money because it dried up.
Interesting. All right. Well, hopefully, Stephanie, by the time we talk again next week on our group call, hopefully you'll have some good news for us. So keep it posted for sure. So, all right. I'm going to unmute Ned. Ned also has an update for us on his experience. So Ned, you're unmuted. Go ahead and tell us your experience.
Oh, with the PPP?
Yes.
Yeah, so what I did is I had applied with a big bank first with which is one of our primary banks. I mean, they're not a huge bank, but they're a regionally very big bank. And their process, when I went online, was like, very lengthy. And they wanted all sorts of documentations, all sorts of things, which I spent like a day putting it together and uploaded everything. And then a week later, they said, oh, we don't need any of that stuff. Just fill out this 3-page application. So I did. I filled it out. I sent it back to them. But meanwhile, I had also applied with a small community bank that we bank with as well. And the community bank essentially processed our stuff within like 2 days. And yesterday or day before yesterday, they had already approved it. They sent us a loan acceptance documents. You signed it. And I assume the money is in the account. I haven't checked. But yeah, they came through like within a week, and the other big bank kind of sat on it for a week before I even heard back from them. And they said everything that we did was not needed and redo it, just using this one page. So I kind of just gave up on the big bank and just stuck with the community bank.
Yeah, is anybody that is listening to this out of our participants here gotten funded without an SBA number? Because I never even asked for it. I think the ones that we know that got funded, I don't think had one. At least they didn't mention it. We had like 15 people that got money, and nobody mentioned an SBA number. Did you hear that from anybody, Ed?
Yeah, no, I don't know. I've never asked for that particular part of it, but I can see that Ron Jedwab is raising his hand. So let's thank you for that information, Ned. Please let us know next week. Check your bank account and let us know if you when you actually see the money in your account. And I'm going to go ahead. Great. Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Ned. All right, let's unmute Ron and see what Ron has to say. Okay, Ron, you're on the air. Let's see.
Ron, are you there?
Ron, are you there? All right.
Yeah, Fran raised her hand also.
Yeah, Fran raised her hand as well, although it doesn't look like she is connected right now, but let's try. There we go. Okay, Fran, are you there? Fran, are you there?
Wait, now we understand what talk radio. We understand what talk radio is like, don't we?
Maybe she is there. Are you there, Fran?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Ah, okay. Yeah, so I just was going to share my experience with the PPP that I have. So I applied through TD Bank. I thought the application was a little bit extensive. I hadn't heard anything official until just this morning. I got documents to sign. And reading through like 3 pages of mumbo jumbo, it made me a little bit nervous. I didn't sign it yet because I wanted to touch base with other people that were in this group. So I thought, you know what, I haven't signed it yet. I'm going to wait until after this meeting here. But it makes it really sound more like it's a loan more than it's going to be forgiven. So I contacted my banker, and he sent me an article that was in our local newspaper, because you can't cut through all the political mumbo jumbo on any of this whole thing that's going on. I really, and then there's an opt-out button. If you don't want to take it after you read through their 3 pages of scaring you to death, you can opt out for the loan. So I was a little bit nervous. I really don't want to have to pay it back. If I have to pay it back, then I might as well just take my payroll out of what I have in the bank. But I know I shouldn't be doing that either. So I didn't know what you guys' opinion was. Other banks may be doing it differently, but my TD, what I have to sign makes it very iffy if it's going to be forgiven. So I was a little bit nervous.
I went, I was up at literally at 3 in the morning clicking all this, and I read all those too. And to me, it's a bank, for God's sakes, right? I mean, and it is a loan. It is a loan. It's a regular loan, and they fill out all the loan paper just like it's a loan. So they're making you a loan. They have how much you're going to pay back per month, blah, blah, blah. I think that what happens is any bank, I'm going to call it a weasel clause. I mean, the whole country may go to hell in a handbasket, and everything may fall apart, and the government may get out of business, and they won't pay it back. I mean, you never know, right? So banks, being very conservative, are going to have some kind of clause in there that says, if, the whole government goes bankrupt and all this is forgiven, you're still going to owe us the money because they're actually loaning you the money. So it is a loan with the bank or a loan with PayPal. It is a loan to them. And the only condition is it's going to be forgiven. But there's no guarantees in life. And to me, if you don't get it, you can never get it forgiven. That's my opinion. So I'm going to take it. I don't really need it, but at the same time, I'm going to take it. It is 1% interest. And if I don't take it, I'll never get a chance to get it forgiven. And let's say I'm going to come up with a number just out of the air. Let's say there's a 95% chance that it's going to be forgiven. Are you going to take the risk? I will. What do you think, Ed?
Yeah, I just think if they start to not forgive these loans, there's going to be such a public outcry after everything they've done to reemphasize over and over again. I mean, I got an email from the SBA. It was in regards to the EIDL, but in there it summarized and it said quite clearly that the PPP was a forgivable loan. So, and the conditions under which we've just discussed of whether it's forgiven. So,
and can I just add one thing to that, Ed?
Yes.
That, for accounting purposes, and I'm probably beating a dead horse here, but, when you get the money, to ensure forgiveness, make sure you document where the money goes. It only goes to payroll. It goes to, the allowable areas for forgiveness. If you can document that dollar for dollar, I think you've covered your bases.
I agree.
Okay.
And that's, you just have to show that you spent the money on payroll. And it's, millions of businesses, so it's not that tough. But I mean, there may be there's some remote probability that it won't be paid back, but I would go with it considering that, let's say it's only a 90% shot they're going to forgive it. Why not? I mean, if you don't get it, you can never get it forgiven.
True. Okay. I just wanted to see what other people's opinions were because I was a little bit like, it sounds like a straight up loan, which I don't want. So.
Well, no, it is a straight up loan. I mean, the paperwork is a straight up loan.
Yeah.
That's what you read through. But the forgiveness is by the SBA. So the way this works is, as far as I know, I may be wrong, but my understanding is you get the money from PayPal. They're going to loan me the money. They've been trying to loan me money forever anyway. So they're going to loan me the money. Then when the 8 weeks are up, the SBA is going to send them and myself some kind of questionnaire. It says, did you spend the money, blah, blah, blah. I'm probably going to fill out something. And did you commit fraud, da, 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 da. If I pass those little things, then they are going to give PayPal the money to pay off my loan. If I don't meet those requirements, they're not going to give PayPal the money to pay off my loan. So PayPal is going to treat it like a regular loan. So I can see why a bank would do everything they can to say this is a regular loan. And we assume the feds or the SBA is going to pay it off. But there is no 100% guarantees in anything. So that's banking. So I would expect that from a bank. That make sense?
Right. Yeah, it makes total sense. I just, you guys all signed and took it, so I'm going to jump in. I'll sign it as soon as I get off of this conference call.
There you go.
There you go.
All right.
The check's in the mail.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you.
Keep us posted, Fran. You're welcome.
Yeah.
All right. So also I see Ned just gave us an update. He did check and the money is in his account. So good for you,
Yay!
Ned. I see money
Yay!
there. And he said the APR is only 1%. So
very good.
All right. So Ron, I don't know if Ron is there. He's got his hand up. Still nothing from Ron. Okay, Ron, I'm gonna put your hand. I'm gonna put your hand down, Ron, and then if you want, you can re-raise it. I see that Marcos Santa Ana has just joined us, and I think he has a question. I'm gonna unmute Marcos if I can. Let me see. Self-muted. Marcos is self-muted. All right, Marcos, if you want to ask your question, feel free to raise your hand. Let's see, Matt Ducharme. Let's see.
Matt Ducharme.
Matt. Okay, Matt. Matt, you're live. Go ahead, Matt.
All right. Hopefully, I'm technically working on my end. I've been attempting to get the PPP pushed through with U.S. Bank, who I've had a fairly long-standing relationship with, and got their disappointing notice last Thursday that the program was out of funds. They're continuing to process my application in the hopes that if new funds are appropriated, then I would be pushed to the front of the line. automatically ready to fund. I appreciate that. Communication has been not great, but at this point, I don't have any other established relationships to work off of. So I'm taking note of your suggestions at PayPal and some of the other options.
Right. I mean,
go ahead.
We noticed that on the application, when you fill it out, then the PayPal application, whatever you do, it doesn't say have you applied somewhere. It merely says have you been funded. So you could apply at 15 places until you're funded. So don't let that slow you down. I made the mistake of waiting to do that, which was my bad.
Okay. Well, yeah, I felt like, if I was applying at one place, then I didn't want there to be overlap to, create a situation where it would seem fraudulent or whatever. I don't know how all of that works. So that's encouraging to know. One thing that I did find out this week, I do have a cash flow manager account that is an unsecured SBA line of credit, incorporated into my business banking. And I received a letter this week in the mail. I was upset last week that they said that they had stopped the auto draft on that account, which cost me 0.5 point of interest. But the reason that they did that, I got a second letter this week, is that the SBA is now covering payments on that account for me, both principal and interest, for the next 6 months. I don't know if anybody else has an existing SBA line of credit account like that, but it looks like that is going to work to my advantage as well, where they're actually making payments on my behalf for the next 6 months.
Wow, that's great. That's awesome. Yeah, I have not heard that. So, wow, Matt. Well, that's great. Awesome. Thank you for that information. And yeah, please keep us updated. We'll look forward to hearing what the latest update is next week. So.
Can do.
All right. Well, let's. I'm going to go ahead and mute Matt now. And Marcos, again, if you've got a question, let me know and raise your hand. And let's move on now. And we're going to move on to the second part of our presentation. And now that we're kind of getting through this, and we're not through this completely, but we're to the point now where people are starting to ask, what does the next year look like? And obviously, there's still a lot of uncertainties, a lot of stuff that we don't know what's going to happen. But I did a lot of reading this weekend, trying to kind of compile all the information that I was getting and trying to put it all together. So let me give you kind of my take on what I think is going to happen here as we continue forward. The first thing is, I think it's clear, society and business is going to be changed permanently, right? Just like 9/11 changed our whole safety and security, whether it's at airports or other places, COVID-19 is going to change the health and hygiene standards in this country and probably in the world forever. As Paul likes to joke, he said, we're going to say, remember the days when you could shake hands or hug each other? It's just probably not going to happen. Another thing that is clear is, we got into this very quickly in a matter of days and weeks, but we're not going to get out of it so quickly. It's going to take months, if not years, to get out of this. President Trump has outlined a plan that it seems like most of the states are kind of going along with as well, that they're going to kind of open businesses in phases over time. So what they're saying is in the first phase, they're going to open retail and restaurants, but they're going to have them be socially distanced, which means, less tables in restaurants, still no bars, unfortunately, and groups up to 10 people. So that means if you have an office where you have 10 or less people, you're probably going to be allowed to open. Then in phase 2, they're going to open schools and larger groups up to 50 people. And then in the third...
I'm going to comment.
Yes.
One of the things that the big companies use, which sort of applies to this, is if I had, 500 franchises and every group had less than 5 or 6 people, I could go for the small business funding, even though I did 800 million. So That's how they got around this, because I may have 1,000 employees, but if there's no more than 10 in any one group, I'm going to count each group of 10. I'm not going to count my whole 200 franchises.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. We forgot to bring that up. But yeah, that came out in the news yesterday as well. That was how companies like Shake Shack and Ruth Chris Steakhouse and some other large companies that had public equity sources as well. So, and some of them like Shake Shack now have kind of been shamed into returning their money. So And then in phase 3 is finally, it's not until phase 3 when there's actually unrestricted staffing of work and assemblies of people up to 250. But in my opinion, I think sporting events, performances, conventions, anywhere where there's tens of thousands of people, I just don't see those happening until we get a vaccine. I just don't see that happening. So I'm a huge sports fan.
That's sort of
I
bad
can't
news
imagine.
for Vegas, right? You know,
Bad news for
Vegas.
Vegas.
200,000 people
Right.
show up a day in Las Vegas, right? So that's not
Yep.
going to happen.
Bad news for college football, the NCAA. I mean, it's such a cultural institution in the fall. I can't imagine what that's going to be like. But so the other thing that's interesting is the production is going to be reduced, resulting in lower efficiencies. You know, they've talked about auto manufacturers. They're going to have less people on their production line because they have to keep them socially distanced. And so that's going to require a longer time to assemble a car. There's going to be lower densities in stores and public areas. In restaurants are going to have less tables in their restaurant, which means that they're going to be able to turn them over less frequently. They're going to make less money per night. So it's just going to cause an overall reduced efficiency in society. Now let's go further and take a look at what the impact is going to be on residential construction. I'm going to talk about 3 trends that I'm seeing, and then we're going to talk more specifically about how to translate those into your construction business. So the first trend I'm seeing is there's going to be added regulations and procedures. This just isn't going away. They're here to stay, just like seatbelts are, right? Seatbelts wasn't a trend. Once they implemented them, everyone used them. You know, the current standards right now, which may change, but I think many are going to stay, is 5 people maximum on a site and a single trade on a site, hourly hand washing required, not sharing tools, maintaining 6 feet apart, not eating your lunch together. Those kinds of things, I think, some of those are going to be with us for quite a while. The next thing is, as I said before, it's longer production times, right? We're going to see supply chain delays and disruptions over the next year. We're going to see lower efficiencies in crews due to those added procedures that I just mentioned and the fact that they're smaller sizes. So the fact of the matter is, it's going to take you longer to finish your construction projects. It's going to take you longer to build your houses, longer to complete your remodels, and you need to bake those longer times into your construction schedules and into your estimates in supervision and overhead costs. Yes, Paul.
So I have a question for you. And what if I'm working on a $2 million job? I got $1 million of it done. It's a fixed fee. I'm not cost plus. And it's now going to take me way longer to get it done. Is that a change order? Is that an act of God? I mean, how do I get the money in that I'm going to have to pay because this thing's going to take twice as long as I thought, and it's not my fault? Right.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And, you know, there's been a lot of talk about the force majeure clause, which is, you know, the acts of God and whether this coronavirus is an act of God or not. I can tell you from an insurance standpoint, they specifically exclude any kinds of viruses from their coverage under acts of God. I think it's really up to your attorney and your individual interpretations of your construction contract. But I think it is something that you want to look at.
One step further, as a contractor, then I'm going back to my client because they're just as aware as I am of what's going on. So there, ideally, with a good client, would be a renegotiation, which is the rules have changed, the contract terms have changed, here's what I need, and we're working that out. And hopefully it's not a lawyer determining what it is, but it's an agreement between, you know, client and contractor.
And I think it's important that the client understands that it is going to take longer to do your job, and it's going to cost more money, especially in supervision, because a lot of people don't break out Division I of supervision, and it's just sort of baked into the whole thing. So it has to be a change order. And so it's going to have, you need to start doing this now, because you don't want to like present it, get back on the work. Right now it's slowing you down. And so let's say you're still working but at a slower rate, and then you hit them with oh, by the way, you know, it's going to cost $50,000 more than I said because I've got another supervision in here and it's taking way longer and I have to wash my hands 3 times before I can drive a nail, blah, blah, blah. You better get on it now, because we've been in this business for a long time. And the worst thing that you can do is not stay ahead of the game when it comes to change orders. And this is a change order because it's changing conditions, and do the work anyway. And then at the end of it, try to collect it and go, oh, by the way, because of this whole COVID-19 thing, it took us longer and longer. So here is the bill, $50,000 more than we said it was going to be. A lot of people just flat won't pay it because you didn't tell me, not my problem.
Yeah. Now, there's going to be some renegotiation that'll take place, but everything you're saying, Paul, you must be proactive and talk about the changes that were out of your control. And in that consequence, it's an unforeseen circumstance, Paul. And that's in most contracts.
Unforeseen condition, like you got in, got, mold or something.
And that is in most contracts.
Right. But make sure you do that now. Don't assume that people are going to figure, oh, you knew it was going to cost more money because it took me longer. No. They're going to say, oh, it should be cheaper because the demand's less and there's a lot of people out of work. So this whole price of the job should go down because everything's going to be cost less because we're in a recession. That's what happened last recession. So we should be paying less money, not more. I know that's going to come out.
Yeah. And that's the point that I make at the bottom of the slide here, that previous recessions affected prices. This recession is affecting production and not necessarily pricing. If anything, it may actually raise costs. So, and then the last trend that I wanted to mention quickly is the reduced face-to-face interactions. What we've seen now is going to become baked into our industry and our ways of social interaction. So the staff is going to work less time in the office and more time from home. There's pretty much all the experts seem to think that there's going to be flare-ups of this thing before it all goes away. So there very well could be that they ease the restrictions, let everyone go back to the office, and then in your specific county or state, there's a flare-up and people are required to work at home. And plus, people are going to start realizing, hey, I can get a lot more work done at home, especially once the kids go back to school and you're not having to deal with that. And clients are going to be much more. Go ahead, Paul.
Well, I was saying there's interesting. We do recruiting, as you know, the company recruit for like 25 different companies across the country, and we've been studying the work at home thing. We have a really good test, which you talked about last time, as far as telling whether a person is going to work out in the job or not. But we've discovered there's a whole other series of tests that tell you whether the person is going to be a good employee working at home. And this is the ducks to eagle school question, because you can't send your ducks to eagle school and expect it to work. Some people work well at home and some people just don't. So, and they don't work well unless you're under supervision. So you can't necessarily take the people you've got that worked well as a group, as a team in your office, put them all home and expect them to do anything. You may have to get new people that work well at home because it's an entirely different kind of personality.
Exactly. Yeah. And then the other thing too is to realize that not only with your staff working at home, but clients now are going to be much more accepting of virtual site visits, remote design sessions, even when this is over. I mean, you're going to have them in your office occasionally, but I can just tell you, I've been staying with my folks out here for the last 2 weeks, my 83-year-old folks. They are so much more comfortable now. My dad just did a Zoom call this morning with his Kiwanis group. They're understanding how to utilize this and deal with things remotely. And so I think that's going to be ongoing. Okay, so let's move on now and talk about these post-pandemic best practices for the residential construction industry. And we've isolated them to various topics, but the first thing I want to bring up here is that it's not coming, it's here now, right? So what's happened is that the coronavirus has sped up these digital changes by like 2 to 3 years. I mean, the whole idea of remote sessions and cloud-based construction management and all of these kinds of things, they've been around for a while, but the coronavirus sped this all up. And so this digital transformation of the residential construction industry that we've been talking about is now here, and it's happening so much more quickly. So I put a book up there that Paul is reading right now that he recommended. It's called Life After Google. And the subtitle is The Fall of Big Data and the Rise of the Blockchain Economy. So if you want to kind of see where things may be going in the future, that's a good book to read.
And we'll comment on that. The problem is security. And you're going to have to do the same thing. I mean, the idea of if you go to, he uses being this book, but if you go to do anything out, I mean, you have 15 passwords, 20 variations of password, change your password, and that's going to get nothing but worse. And to finally security, it's just going to fall apart. I mean, it can't be maintained at this level. And whether you're asking clients to pay for things, I mean, I'll give you an example, checks. Checks are going to be history, and they're going to be history really quick. My wife's from Finland, and we have a house in Finland. We spend the summers there. And in Finland, there's no checks, 0 checks. If you go to a bank and try to cash a check, they don't do it. They don't know what checks are. They don't use checks anymore. Everything's direct money transfer. And literally, you can have, $1 million in your checking account and go to Finland and try to cash a check, and you can't do it. So checks are going away. Now, keep in mind how much of your business right now, whether paying vendors or whatever, is done by check. It's going to change.
Yeah. All right. So that was we could maybe talk about that. This was one of the slides here. So, and that's exactly it. Checks are obsolete. And also another thing that we were going to talk about is outsourcing professional services, right? So no longer does your accountant, your recruiter, your business coach need to meet you in person anymore. They don't have to be located in your city. They can be remote. And now you can really have the expertise of getting industry leaders in each of your specialties for your professional services, because you don't have to be limited to those people that are located in your area. So, all right, let's talk about post-pandemic best practices for marketing. So really, this is where we're seeing one of the biggest changes, is this, what we're calling the digital differentiation. Builders who embrace this new technology and how they adopt it in their businesses are really going to set themselves apart. And it starts with the website. Websites are going to need to be dynamic, engaging, interactive. They have changed quite a bit recently, and they'll continue to. That's going to really be the go-to place where people are going to vet their contractors.
Right. In the old days, the old days was in 3 months ago, people considered websites like a business card, right? Like, it needs to show what you do and how you do it. They don't consider websites their major way of creating an image to the people they're trying to market to. And that's definitely changing. It's the referral thing, just answering the phone and doing a good job will no longer work as well as it used to.
Yeah. So, and then also how well the contractor adopts technology, whether it's a cloud-based construction management system, video conferencing, screen shares, remote viewing, design tools. Those are going to start to be the things that are going to differentiate the contractors that are equipped for this new age that we're going into. And consumers will understand that. Clients and homeowners will see that, and they're going to be more attracted to those contractors that are more technology savvy and know how to deal with that. And you want to incorporate that into your marketing. Okay, post-pandemic best practices for production. Again, a cloud-based construction project management system is just a necessity at this point. It's the thing that allows you to be able to remotely control and manage your construction projects, as well as for your clients to be able to monitor them. Remote site visits with clients and project managers. We showed an example before of a Matterport. This is another Matterport that was done for a pre-drywall inspection. So instead of going in and doing a series of videos or 360 photos of a rough-in before you're hanging your sheetrock, this company, Lewis Builders, went in and did a Matterport. Virtual inspections. We're starting to see that some building departments are willing to take virtual inspections. Many of our clients are doing remote design sessions now with their clients, and online selection processes are becoming more important as well. So let's talk about the post-pandemic best practices in staffing. This is something that Paul talked about earlier. Again, the recruiting for the remote workforce. There is actually a test that we have that allows prospective employers to test for their ability to work productively from home. And also there's ways within the construction project management systems of a geofencing of work crews to be able to provide remote supervision to make sure that all your guys are on the job site. And if they leave the job site, it alerts you of that. So in the forms of staffing, that's all going to be important. Best pandemic practices in terms of purchasing and selections. Unfortunately, for many of you who don't like this, we really think that the online selections are here to stay. and showrooms are going to decrease in popularity. Obviously, right now, no one's going to a showroom. But even after this goes away, we feel that less and less people are going to want to go to a showroom. They're getting used to doing more online, being able to shop online and do everything else online. They're going to feel more comfortable making their selections online as well. We had this discussion, Paul and I said, well, it's not like a toaster. I mean, a toaster, you can buy a toaster online. I mean, a toaster is a toaster, right? But you're not going to want to buy your tile online or your light fixtures. But that could be changing. So you're also going to see less customer service at retailers, right? Home Depot now is pick up your job sites curbside. So call in your orders. And I think also you got to get ready for digital trade shows. I think that's going to be happening as well.
Well, we've all gone through the transformation where there was people that checked you out, right? You didn't check yourself out. And go to Home Depot. Half of the checkout is check yourself out. They give you a scanner and say, have at it, because they're trying to reduce labor costs. So they're going to use this to reduce labor costs. So I guarantee in the future, service is not going to be as important. And I hate to say it, an example of that is Neiman Marcus, right? Who is the personification of good service, is declaring bankruptcy.
Yeah, bummer.
Exactly. Yeah. So, all right. So that's our take of things as it's going forward. Again, things are changing weekly, as we said, but we're really starting to see these trends. And I think the clear message here is that you really need to get on to the technology, the cutting edge of the technology, because I know that's eluded many of us as contractors. Paul always calls contractors Luddites, and people that are not very open to adopting new technology, and from back in the day when they didn't want to have a pager or a cell phone or a smartphone. And but now really this current pandemic has forced us to really embrace this technology, and it's forced all of us, right? Our clients and our customers and prospects. Yeah.
And an example would be, let's say, Ed, you as a contractor, whatever, you say, okay, you're going to compete. There's contractor A and contractor B. Contractor A can't use smartphones. Forget the smartphone altogether. They're going to use pagers or something. And you get a smartphone. Who's going to win the marketing game? There's no contest, right? But smartphones are now embedded into the construction. They're not a choice anymore. Smartphones are embedded into the construction industry. And it's going to, same way with web-based software, with Matterport photos. They're going to be embedded into the industry, so you aren't going to be around if you don't use them.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that homeowners are going to look at people's websites, and if they see that they utilize Zoom and virtual design sessions and Matterport technology and all of those technology, I think that the consumer is going to look at that and go, hey, this is the guy that I want to be building my house. With all the uncertainty that we've experienced over the last, say it's a year from now, 2 years from now, they're going to want to use that contractor who really understands how to use that technology, so that going forward, they have all of the resources available to deal with this continuing situation that is not going to go away here in the next few months.
Yeah. I remember when germophobic used to be like a problem, not the norm, right? Yeah. We've all known people that were germophobic, that washed their hands everywhere. They wouldn't touch the doorknob in the bathroom, and they had sanitizer on everything. I used to laugh at those people. I thought it was real funny. Well, it's the new norm.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, that's what we have for you this week. Let's end with the slide that we always end with, which is to be informed, stay connected, and keep positive. This is as relevant this week as it was when we first created it back in March. Again, remember to stay informed, but don't get stressed out watching the nightly news, which just causes panic in people. Make sure you keep staying connected with your peers. I know that a lot of people that are in Builder 20 groups or Remodelers Advantage groups or local trade groups are meeting more frequently. I know that my group here in San Diego, we used to meet once a month, and now we're meeting every week. And so it's really, really important that you connect with your peers. because we obviously can't physically do that. We can't go and get together for lunches and meetings, but that kind of connection is really important.
Right. And along with that, this is a free meeting. So if you have any contractors or friends, we'd love to have them come board because it doesn't cost anything, and the more the merrier. So please promote this to your friends because it's absolutely free.
Yeah. All right. So just as a reminder, we are also doing free weekly webinars on Fridays, and we'll be doing that again this Friday. On those, we try to be much more condensed. We're going to have much of this same information, but kind of delivering it in a more focused 30-minute format without the interaction of the participants. So let's see. I was looking to see if we had any other questions. Does it look, David, did we have any other?
Well, it's a side issue on Teens United, and honestly, we're really approaching the top of the hour. So yeah. Maybe when we come back next week.
Exactly right, Ned. Yeah, let's do that next week. Again, here's all of our phone numbers, our email addresses. If anything comes up during the week or questions that you have, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're here to help in any way that we can. We're happy to reply to any emails we get. We try to reply within a couple of hours, and we're taking all of the phone calls that we're receiving as well. So thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.
Yep. Good afternoon.
Take care, everybody.
All right.
All if you need help.